This is the continual evolution of the East Coast beat. What can I say? Last couple of days have been a little hectic. Uh, and then I've had to deal with one person in particular, and I may have been a little too stern and a little too shut up. But like I say, I tell him, hey, who do you see come by my apartment? He says, nobody. No dudes, no girls. And I'm like, exactly. I think I'm getting too much company. He says, but I'm the only one that stops over. So, like, I've been on the football team and I've been on the speech and debate team and I've bunked up with, other guys on weekend trips and stuff. And, I've been in the army, I've been in a barracks room, I've been in basic training. And then when I first got to the army, I had two roommates that were medics. And, but eventually I ended up with my own room. So luckily, I had for most of the time I was in the military, I had my own room. And then when they did give me a roommate, he got sent to Macedonia for like 6 months. So I still had my own room. And I've lived with other people. I've shared a house. I've shared an apartment. I've shared a couple houses. I've lived with other people, but in the end, it's like, there's times where I got to do what I got to do, and some of that is sit by myself and not hear somebody else on their phone. I mean, I understand there's been times where I can kick it, and there's 12 people sitting on a couch and everybody's doing their own shit. I understand, but at the same time, if I'm kicking it at my place, doing my little thing, and then you want to swing through, and hey, what you doing? Well, I was kicking it, so unless you can make it better, I'm a grumpy old man. You know what I'm saying? I'm a grumpy old fist in the sky man. The night chill has come to the valley. I sit, I sit and remember. I remember a different city at times. Same me, different vibe. I remember so many different places. And then there was this time, and then there was this time. Like, I remember when I would dance in circles, dance in crowds, dance in the falling rain. But now summer is coming to the SB. Old men hustle young, square shouldered, working type boys for dollars or sympathy or some other type of unknown currency to me. What has become when civility, when the old rob the young and they call it confidence? But what the old men forget is that the youth still believes, and that the youth still fights to believe, and that is the will of the youth that, like, um, even in a barren desert, that there would still be wildflowers in bloom. But who has time to think of these things when I realize I'm mortal and this will all end and begin again anew? I'm simply sitting in a room listening to the violins, and I myself am silence. I hear whispers telling me to smile, whispers telling me to stay still, and in the end, I stay silent. In all things, there is a void, a silence, a refrain. Let these times be heavy in my heart and pull me through my days. But now back to the hum of the AC and the not so distant roars of trucks, cars, and buses passing down the boulevard. In the flicker of stars, all things can change. I can still see you, and I have waited here with the descendants of Cain. In my eyes glistening are pain and the reflection of the red street corner light. I had lost my mind in the valley. Too many extra weekend shifts and up all night studying for exams. And in the end I realized that even though I did not want to, I had to let it go. I've seen many other men that strangers would call my brother, and it's made me realize that if so, in their eyes, my tribe is no better than a band of traveling thieves who make money from passion and profit from corruption. But I was once a child, and I was once of fragile mind. But my ego was stronger than all of those who tried to bind me. And many times I have been without a friend, a lover, and at times even without an enemy. But I question tonight, do you still dance with me in the starlit night? Do you still wait for me to come back with a fresh scar and a rose in my teeth? It seems as though I have lived coast to coast, and I have seen the interstates begin and end. But I know that there are some things that are bigger than that. I walk the sidewalks and the avenues and the boulevards, but what I'm searching for is salvation or redemption. But because of you, I was reborn as a mortal man. But I know life is bigger. I know there are many shades unseen, so many hidden stories, some in only our memory. But let us rest now, for it is the witching hour. In the wintertime, you know, you wake in the morning, you get that first cup. For me, I get that first cup of coffee, I put on my socks, my sweats, turn on the heater, if the sun is shining outside during the wintertime and it's clear, clear sun, I'll go sit in the sun, I'll even take my shirt off, even if it's, 60, 50, 60 degrees. I don't know, at least for 10, 15 minutes, just to keep the warmth on me, the natural warmth. And then during the summertime, like I said, man, I spend so much time inside. I'm getting older, and it just drains me. When I was younger, I used to feel the heat, and I knew it was heat. But now that I'm older, I'm just like, man, maybe, everybody warning me, hey, you should not be outside on a 96-degree day, walking to the laundromat. Maybe they're actually looking out for my better. So I think to myself, okay, maybe, at 51 with, this limp and this injured hand, you know what I'm saying? Maybe I should take the heat a little more seriously, you know what I'm saying? But that's the continual evolution of the East Coast beat. There once was a time when I was 12 years old and I was scared to walk down my neighborhood at night because everybody was so much bigger and, I didn't know anybody. And, everybody had pit bulls on chains and shit like that. And then there was a time when I was 19 years old, and I was walking through a German city at 12:30 at night by myself with $500, and I never thought that nobody tried to rob me. Nobody pushed up on me, nobody asked me for anything. So, there was a time when I was a young kid in a new country and I was afraid. I know that. I know the feeling of maybe, I don't know, maybe, people have more fear. I've like, there's definitely like when you're about to get into a car accident, that's definitely a different kind of afraid, you know what I'm saying? Or however you want to call that response. But yeah, when I moved into the country, I felt fear. I wasn't part of the neighborhood. I knew that for sure. And, years later, as a soldier, I could walk through a city, $500 in my pocket, walk into walk into any establishment, you know, and not even be able to speak the language and have, just sit down, get a drink, get something to eat, well, hey, what's good? What's happening this weekend in the downtown, that a guy with a couple of dollars can go to and have a little bit of fun. I mean, I like markets. I like, fairs. I like chocolate covered fruit and funnel cake. Like, I dig all that stuff. So, I mean, there's been times in my life, like I said, when I was young and I didn't have any money, I would just sit in my room and listen to the radio and stare at the wall. And then when I was 19 and divorced and I had money, I would just get on a train. I mean, hey, I hear a bunch of soldiers go to this city. I knew there was a soldiers club. Someone had taken me there once, and I just made my way back. And then from that point on, I met a couple of locals, German. Well, I had met a couple of locals, Germans and Hungarians and stuff like that. And then I would go to the soldiers club, and these girls would meet me there, and then we'd go not camping, but we'd go, out to I have been walking on trails. Like, that is something that some Germans really like to do. It's just, oh, hey, let's go walk these gardens, and. So, I've done that. Yeah, I did more than just sit in a club and drink beer and listen to music. But, that was a kid that at one point had no money. I mean, I just had no money. So I had no girlfriends, and all my friends were super broke, and like I said, that led to at some point I have stolen shit, as a kid. I don't anymore. Like I said, I've never starved to death, and I will ask somebody. I will borrow $20 or $10 or $20 if I have to get a gallon of milk and some frozen burritos to get me through a couple of hard days. But I don't steal. I don't do that anymore. But then again, I'm not trying to feed my mom and my sister, or my kids or anything like that. It's just me. If I spend more of my money on weed or a couple of shirts or a new pair of shoes, and I come up short on food, I'm going to just eat what I eat. When I lived in Florida, after I got out of high school, and I ended up in Florida for a while, I was living on 3 packs of ramen noodles a day because I didn't have a job, and I was living on child support, and the rent took up a big portion of that child support money because I was living with like 5 guys in an apartment. But like I said, that's how the world flows, and then somewhere along the way, you'll somebody will say something, or you'll say something to them, and it'll kind of seem like every other conversation, but it turns into something deeper. And you'll remember that 25, 30 years later. I don't know how long I'll live, but I know that there are people that I've met along the way that I'll remember, you know, not every day, not, not all the time. But every now and then I just remember and I think to myself, you know what? For as arrogant and as stubborn and as bullheaded as I was still a good friend at the time. I was good enough. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I was honest. You know, what can I say? At least I was honest. So the continual evolution of the East Coast beat.